Maduro, Nicolas Maduro, surrounded by heavy security as he is transported to a New York City court.
There is being walked
So it looks
out
like
the
they
facility.
may have landed that helicopter on the soccer field. Now, there is that helipad on the West Side Highway side that they used the 32nd Street.
There's some also
originally.
downtown.
So it looks like now they decided to use the soccer field as a landing pad for those helicopters. This is a huge security operation as well, because as you know, he's a part of those narco-terrorists, TDA, and as well. And so they're on high security alert because they have their own resources, their own drones as well.
So they have, you got to read the 25-page indictment. They have an airtight case on this guy. I'm not saying there's not going to be moments that things are going to be tossed out and they might be lengthy and it's going to be costly. But they got him dead to rights through 3 administrations. And you know, that's why the bounty was on his head. And most people, prior to President Trump grabbing him, everyone was agreement he had to go.
This is unbelievable. This is in Brooklyn, New York, where he is in jail, and they're putting him on this chopper. They're going to take him into Lower Manhattan. The federal district court is in Chinatown, and they'll transport him there. They're doing this because there's a lot of traffic in New York, A, and B, I think for security reasons, they want to make sure he gets to the courthouse and that he's safe. This is going to be a typical briefing today. He and his wife will appear there together. They'll both enter their pleas. They're expected to be non-guilty. Then bail will be addressed, and the next court date will be set. There will not be cameras in the courtroom, and this is the first step of years-long prosecution, because they're going to take probably another year to seat a jury to weigh in on all the evidence they have against him. But Donald Trump said the judge is a respectable judge, and he said we'll most certainly order them to be held without bond. They say that he will ask prosecutors and the defense attorneys how much time they will need to prepare for a trial.
Okay, that was so much BS. That reminds me of what happened after the first Gulf War went down and CNN found itself with a lot of spare time on its hands trying to do 24/7 news. Had it not been for Gulf War I, CNN would have been bankrupt. But in any event, they got saved, and what they wound up happening is, for instance, there was a rogue cop went crazy out and, well, he went rogue on the Los Angeles Police Department, and they were tracking him out into the California woods, and a log cabin literally got set on fire. So for 43 minutes, we sat there and watched the idiot bobblehead, the talking heads, babble on. Chuck, do you think he was in that?
Oh my God. Somebody must have called him.
Chuck, do you think he? Oh, God.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
All right, what happened was this LA cop went rogue. So they tracked him down, maybe, and there was a burnt log cabin in some California woods. And for 43 minutes by my watch, the talking heads were going, Chuck, do you think he may have been in there? I don't know, Al. If he was, he's in trouble. He's got problems now. Well, I don't really understand. Did they follow him? I don't know. And then they were looking at the same thing the audience is looking at, and they commented nonsensically for 43 minutes on garbage. It's a waste of time. That's what you just saw here, the picture of the helicopter. They could have given us 15 seconds, one of their sound bites, instead of a long, drawn-out thing for this. And that's what they do now. They give you 15 seconds for a sound bite for the vital stuff and 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes worth of nonsense. Now, what the deal is this. Ostensibly, this was done under the Monroe Doctrine, but there's also an enabler to the Monroe Doctrine, which is still federal law, passed as a statutory scheme almost 200 years ago. Now, what that is Article 1, Section 8 of the U.S. Constitution and Article 6 of the Constitution. Article 1 contains a lot of stuff in it, and one of them is the pursuit, eradication, and suppression of piracy wherever found in the world. It mandates that as a responsibility of the armed forces of the United States. There's no declaration of war that's needed for that. Also, there is in Article 1, Section 8, shall enforce the law of nations. That's a quote of the provision. There is no need for a declaration of war on that. Permission of Congress, that is an affirmative obligation of the armed services and the commander-in-chief, both of them commander-in-chief. Article 6 of the Constitution says ratified treaties will be part of the supreme law of the land along with the Constitution. All right. Now, going from that, we have ratified treaties that make drug trafficking on the high seas an international crime. Quote, the law of nations shall be enforced by the armed services of the United States. The Monroe Act, which is 200 years old, relied upon that article of the U.S. Constitution for its legitimacy. We've got Noriega from Panama, who was indicted for drug trafficking. We've got bin Laden, who was a pirate because air piracy, hijacking, remember, 4 aircraft on 911 caused some problems. That is now piracy. So there was an affirmative obligation of the armed services and the commander in chief to go after him. Now,
Okay, so yeah, slow down. I want to get back to the courtroom because I told you we're going
okay,
to talk
well,
about
the courtroom is superfluous right now because what they did is they also indicted him on some federal law dealing with domestic matters because there is an impact with what he was doing. What that is about is called the Two Sons Cartel. And the Sons stand for the emblems that Venezuelan generals wear on their lapels. Not lapels, on the epaulets. What it is we wear stars for our generals and admirals. They wear suns. So the whole command hierarchy of the Venezuelan army has invested in drug trafficking, cocaine, opium that is brought in from other places, from Korea and also the Middle East and also from Israel. There is a blind eye that the U.S. government had been turning on all of this because the money generated was supposed to be used to fund black ops going after communism and after that terrorism. And it is a real live long mess. So one thing that you and I talked about yesterday was it makes a hell of a difference when you're in drug trafficking if you have a safe haven you can escape to. That's how you get on the more legitimate front what the CIA does, what British MI6 does, what the Mossad does, what the old Soviet KGB did, and that is you have your agents do what they do, and if they can escape to an embassy, if they can escape back to their homeland, then they're safe and nobody can touch them. Generally, a drug dealer has nowhere to go except under the table. If he can hide out or flee the country he's going to, and there's no embassy he can run to for diplomatic immunity purposes. So this was appropriate. If you recall the situation with the Cuban Missile Crisis with Khrushchev, who, by the way, was a Ukrainian, and John F. Kennedy back in 1962, you will understand that this is not something that is unusual. There was what shall we call a embargo, a blockade that the United States put on Cuba. And it's the same thing that was not working sufficiently when the U.S. put a blockade on Venezuela with their trafficking, drug trafficking. And the other thing is that the oil tankers that were seized arguably are the property of American interests that were nationalized without due process of our law, and the property rights were extinguished without adequate compensation. So protecting our citizens both at home and abroad, that was another reason to get into it.
Wait, so all right, let me ask you this.
One last other important point. See, it wasn't so much that the oil itself was going to terrorist factions. What was going on is the income was going. So if you want to cut somebody off at the knees, cut their money off in the day's work. So that's what that was about. So it's legit, straight up, precedented, on top. And the Bush administration put the $25 million bond reward up for his capture. And also you've got
Well, you're talking about Bush. Bush didn't put $25 million on Mendora's head.
Yes, he did. So
Maduro wasn't even in power then. What are you talking about?
no, it's from years ago. Bush was in power when he
But
put.
Maduro wasn't president. Which
He
president?
wasn't president. What happened is there was a predecessor. That person is no longer amongst the living. And what went on is there was an election that was held, and that election was won by a woman, but the military junta disregarded the election and they kept power amongst themselves. Maduro was the previous person, Chavez's second in authority, and he managed
No,
the
no.
affairs.
Hugo Chavez was the president.
Well, yeah, but
Maduro was
Maduro was his secondary man who
right.
handled
That wasn't,
administration.
but Bush didn't put the bounty on Maduro because he was nowhere in power. You talking about either Biden or Trump?
Maduro has been in power for a bit more than a year. Trump's been in the office 1 year, and on the 20th, he will have been in 1 year. So, anyway, this has all been happening. Time passes quickly as you get a little older, you know. I mean, it seems like nothing at all, but it's been more
Yeah,
than
it
a
was.
year.
So it wasn't Bush administration. You're going too far back. It was the Biden administration.
I mean Biden.
Yeah.
I
So
confused the two of them. They're
yeah,
quite
but
similar.
that's why I was just saying that, make correcting because people would take it and run with it. So I want to get
It's
back.
Biden, not Bush.
I want to get back to the courtroom.
Exactly
because
right.
Him and his wife pleaded not guilty Monday on narcotic charges, and their next court date is March 17th. So it doesn't say anything here about bail. So with your first appearance at this type of case, this type of major case here, what
No bond. There's no bond appropriate because no bond would just ensure his continued appearance. He has the entire resources of a major country in the world that is a major oil producing country with great wealth that has been demonstrating its both capacity and inclination to disregard international protocol, to ferret illegal substances and people from one location to another. And this is the type of thing that you would consider when setting a bond, which would say no bond is sufficient to ensure that he'll show back up. Now, they've already pulled this off. They're lucky they didn't shoot him. The
military.
The Obama administration claimed they went out to execute bin Laden. I suspect that was a mess up considering the circumstances, and what they wanted to do was capture him, put him on board the aircraft carrier, and it would have been interesting trying to bring him to trial, which they would have done, and they could have interrogated him for months, and the Obama administration before the next election came up could have bragged about, we caught bin Laden, but I think they shot him when he was up on that balcony by accident. And they ran with the story that they went to kill him because of
bin Laden.
Yeah. So anyway,
well, the Switzerland has frozen Maduro's assets, his bank account. So even if and probably other banks as well. So if they even gave him a bond, he probably couldn't make it. But like you said, there's no bond, not in this type of
No, the bond is only not to punish that some people think, because a person's presumed innocent until proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. It is to ensure that the accused will appear for the entirety of the proceedings until they are completed, one way or the other. And this is just nonsense. What does this do to watch several people walk across the parking lot? What do you get out of that? Nothing. It's a waste of time. It's just because they've got nothing better to do and nobody understands it, and they're rushing, trying to find what little 23-year-old knows somebody that's in law school someplace that might give them a slight clue, which is not going to suffice because they should have got this in elementary school like we did. What's going on? Monroe Doctrine.
Now, the dictator. So what's going on now in Venezuela, they're saying that the statue of the former dictator Hugo Chavez is being dragged through the streets. But you have a lot of people outside of the courthouse today. They have pro Maduro and anti Maduro. So of course,
Yeah, that's typical U.S. You get the far left. Oh my God, they invaded another country. And that sounds like America at all times until we actually get pitched into a real live shoot 'em up, with the exception of something like Vietnam, which was highly unpopular and was an ill-advised struggle to get into in the first place that you can lay at Kennedy's feet. But bottom line is this is just typical of the U.S. The Venezuelans are celebrating in the streets of Venezuela at being liberated from oppression, because there are a lot of them that lived in Venezuela where it was an interesting republic where people voted and their votes counted and there was law and order. And now it devolved into a fascist situation, a totalitarian situation, which the American Democrats are trying to impose in a softer edition where it's rainbow rather than some hard-edged emblem that's out there to typify this is a big brother or fearless leader doing whatever's doing. So fearless
I want to
tranny big sister or something, I guess now.
want to play this clip right here because the UN, they're in session today. They were talking about it, but I want to play what Mark Rubio had to say about the UN.
No, you're wrong in your question. Number one, Venezuela is a major source. And the reason why is the following. And I've seen a lot of this reporting, and it's fake reporting, and I'll tell you why. It says that somehow Venezuela is not involved in the drug trade because the UN says they're not involved in the drug. I don't care what the UN says. The UN doesn't know what they're talking about. Maduro is indicted by a grand jury in the Southern District of New York. That means the Southern District of New York presented the evidence to a grand jury, and a grand jury indicted him. And then a superseding indictment came out that was unsealed about a year and a half ago that specifically detailed Maduro's actions. So number one, let there be no doubt, Nicolas Maduro is an indicted drug trafficker in the United States, and he's a fugitive of American justice.
Alleged drug trafficker, and that's from 2022. Yeah, that's the American process. See, we've got an international court in The Hague, and they're always issuing warrants for somebody's arrest, but they don't have the power to back it up. So this time you've got the international policeman said, oh, hey, we're coming in. We've got Triton missile submarines, Virginia, Seawolf, and LA class subboats. We've got nuclear aircraft carriers, RLI Burke destroyers, and F-22s, F-35s, B-1s, B-2s, B-52s, and we will come in and thrash you good and proper, and we can throw in some National Guard F-16s and F-15Es in the mix, and you have nothing that can stand up to it, so move over, we're coming through, get out the way if you can.
So I want to play this clip here of Mandani talking about the
and look at the crook over here to his left.
Letitia James.
Oh, they're not through with Tish.
Well,
that was just an indictment got dismissed because the authority that presented it was held not to be properly confirmed, but it ain't over yet.
Okay, let's see. So let's play this clip.
Over the weekend, but I'm wondering if there's been any updates at all in terms of transportation of Maduro from Brooklyn to Manhattan by helicopter. Unfortunately, that is my understanding. Do you have any information about whether or not that's completed? Or they could shut down the bridge, they did El Chapo.
So I continue to stay in constant communication with my police commissioner and the NYPD, and my job as the mayor of New York City is to ensure that any federal action has a limited impact on the day-to-day lives of New Yorkers, and that's what we're going to continue to deliver on.
Just a quick off topic. Hi, Mr. Mayor. How are you doing?
Hey, how's it going, Joe?
Good. I was wondering if you could give us any updates on your security clearance, and on the timeline, do you sense anything is like amiss or unusual, or does it seem like this is the standard course of business? And since you don't have it yet, could you walk us in a little more detail about how you're getting information and what kinds of information?
Absolutely. everything is going as according to a typical timeline. I'm in the process of applying for that clearance, and I'm also thankful that there are senior members of my team that already have that clearance thanks to past positions that they've held. And so as a result of that, New Yorkers have nothing to fear about my ability to both represent our city and also to deliver for it.
Mr. Trump, President Trump, you have some security clearances to revoke right now. Get on it. You've been advised. You heard it. Staff, go tell the president about this. He has the ultimate authority on who has a security clearance. There are some that need to be revoked. This bunch of radical fascist / communist agents that we have in New York do not need a security clearance for anything outside of New York state business.
So
And that's their business, not ours.
let me just, I want to highlight this here, right? Because this is a quick clip of Maduro when he was active president a while back, basically saying that 85% of the cartel's money is being laundered through U.S. banking system.
El 85% de los miles de millones del narcotráfico internacional anual están en los bancos de Estados Unidos. Ahí está el cartel, que lo investiguen y lo descubran. El lavado de dinero. Mira, yo estaba viendo los datos que dio la vicepresidenta y creo que son más de 500 mil millones de dólares anuales que están en la banca de Estados Unidos, en los bancos legales. Si ellos quisieran investigar un cartel, que investiguen el cartel en el norte, porque allá es que desde Estados Unidos que se dirige todo el narcotráfico de Sudamérica y del mundo, porque también dirigen el narcotráfico del opio, etcétera, etcétera. Es en los Estados Unidos que están las mafias, que están los verdaderos carteles.
Now, you know what's going to work out on
El
this one?
85%.
Sorry.
This is going to be beautiful. See, his wife, Maduro's wife, sent two guys up into the United States a few years ago. They wound up getting caught and indicted and convicted. They were exchanged, the two of them, for 7 operatives that we were interested in. That shows illustrates the point I was making when this female basketball star got caught with the hash oil in Russia. They wasted her trade under the Bush Biden administration by trading her for the merchant of death. Please, she wasn't worth the merchant of death. You see, that was a giveaway. You could have gotten 20 of our agents out, 20 agents worth the merchant of death. We could have gotten good American patriot types who were putting their lives on the line for our country. We could have gotten them free, but we gave it away for some clown who decided she was going to take hash oil in through a major airport. So anyway, we got that. But you see, what happens is his wife's men got traded 2 for 7.
Maduro's wife?
Yeah, she has sent 2 people in. They got busted 3 years ago, and what wound up happening is they just recently got traded, the 2 of them, for 7 operatives that we were interested in. What's likely to happen with this is you heard what he said, or at least you read the translation. And what they're going to do is work up a deal with him. They're going to trade information on who in the American banking system has been laundering money way up at the top of the crime heap, and they're going to wind up trading and letting him go someplace. See, they offered him a deal. He could have retired and gone to some place and lived a life of luxury, but he didn't. So they'll probably give him a reduced offer in return for information if he collaborates, because it would be in the interest of reducing criminality to find out who the people are at the top that have been financing and laundering money and enabling this to happen. You remember that thing, Blacklist?
The show?
The show.
Never watched it, but I know of it.
Okay. In other words, Raymond Reddington was the one that knew all this information, and his blacklist would be composed of people that this man could tell us about. In
So
other words, they enabled the high level crime.
so the question that I asked, what's happened next? Maybe I should ask a more better question is, so do you think that former president of Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro, will do time in a United States federal penitentiary, or is he going to make a deal?
He might, in other words, he might still do time. They might say, well, you know what? You do almost 90% of your time. You get 5 years, you don't get 5 years, you get 60 months. You wind up doing 56 of those months under federal custody. You get 4 months off. You get 10 years, you get 120 months. You get 6 months off out of the 10 years if you get all the good and honor time. So Noriega got 40 years and he's dead now. They wound up commuting his sentence and letting him go after he'd served about 17 years, and he's dead now. He got 40, and he might want to work out a deal for information when he gets tired of being confined and told when he can wipe his butt and when not. Then he might say, hey, get me out of here. Things happen in the system.
Right.